So this subject is materials and methods. It's called research materials and methods. So primarily it's about the act of research. So it's that you guys carry out a host of research, compile a whole lot of information, and it's a great opportunity for you to get that library of information happening as well. It's very important for designers and drafters to have that whole library of information. One thing is, in terms of protecting yourself, like as drafters and designers, we put down details. We tell builders how to build. Now, yes, builders have to read those plans, interpret those plans, and say, look, that's not the code. I'm not happy with, well, I don't feel comfortable about doing that. That happens from time to time. But also, you've got to realise the plans that you're sending out, people will be reading those, working through them, and building from them. What we often don't need to do as drafters and designers is reinvent the wheel. So many architectural details have already been invented and they've been specified by the people that are manufacturing the building products and specifying them. So, you know, for example, like our window frames, the manufacturer would have a detail about how they're fixed. The plasterboard, you'll have, you know, like CSR I've got what's called a red book. It's this massive, it's a very thick book of how plasterboard should be installed, and all the different plasterboard manufacturers have their installation manuals about how plasterboard should be installed. There's a lot of commonality between them all, but you will find that with the vast majority of building products, there'll be details. And if you've compiled a really good library of design guides, you can always flick back to those and go, okay, this is how we're doing this is how we're doing that. You save yourself a lot of time, and you also pass that liability on to somebody else. So if you design to have things installed as per the manufacturer's specifications and specified there to be installed as per the manufacturer's specifications, if something goes wrong, that's the manufacturer, and that's on the manufacturer's warranty. So very important thing, very handy thing to be building up a good library of design guides, etc. And also, it's one of the things that really sets you apart as a designer, knowing about materials and how they get implemented, and to be able to stay at that cutting edge of design. That's what you guys will be doing throughout the semester primarily, and producing reports to that effect, to share with me your research repositories, and also produce reports to show me that you understand how all of these materials and processes are implemented in the building. Essentially what I'm here to do is to guide that research, and also give you the background, give you some insight into possibly some of the things you're not going to read in design guides. That's one of the things about design guides and about product literature, is everybody's product is the best possible product, right? There are issues and there are fallibilities with materials. It's also very important as designers that you understand that as well. So that's primarily what the focus of my sessions is going to be on, is the nuts and bolts of things and some of the implications of things. So first up, so some of you already had, or the vast majority of you already had classes. So you would have used Learn already and logged into Learn. Is there anybody who hasn't had a look at Learn? Chris, you haven't? Okay. So, but you know where to find Learn on the TAFE portal. Have you been?
I could ask one of the tutors in the team or one of the counsellors, if that makes life easier.
Yeah, sure. Well, look, see me after class. Yeah, we'll just have a quick run through that. Yeah, from the way that I open it up, I'm not sure if it's going to be looking the same from your end. So yeah, by all means, run through that with your tutor as well. But yeah, just see me after class, and we'll have a quick run through of accessing Learn. So Learn, that's the place in which I'll be putting a whole lot of materials. So there's a whole lot of information up there as well already in terms of the classes, the timelines, the assessments, and a lot of the study materials. It'll make life easy for you. There's also the possibility for communication with me. So actually probably in there under lecture, yeah, I'm pretty sure under that picture there, it's got my email as well. I might put that on the board for you anyhow, though. So it's michael.jenkins@taperstate, michael.jenkins@taperstate.edu.au. Fairly simple. But you can also communicate with me via Learn, and that's how we may end up running things as well. I might start once everybody's all enrolled and on Learn, put you into a group and get this class group happening. We can message each other like that. So there's that avenue. But what you will all need for accessing the subject is the Learn key. So because I guess you haven't put the Learn key into anything yet, but has everybody else been through that process? Lee, you didn't have a class yet, so you haven't put a Learn key in?
No, I don't think so, but I have access via a link.
Okay.
Lecturer.
Yeah.
That's the same thing online.
Okay.
So her material she provided a link to.
Okay, so you just click on the link and then that enrolled you into Learn.
Yeah, I think so.
Automatically.
That particular unit, possibly.
Yep.
Is it
Okay.
by unit or is it?
Yeah, so it's by unit. Typically, what we've always done up until this point, and I might explore that option and see if that's now a feature in Learn, is to just send out a link that automatically enrolls you. But what we'll roll with for now, since I don't know that system, is to on Learn search for CPP BDN 4001. I'll write that up here. So that's the unique code for this subject. No other code is going to have that exact same code. And the Learn key is going to be 53100119. So 5310. That's the
Enrollment key.
Yeah. So the enrollment key is 53100119. So that's the CRN. So some of you would have been familiar with the CRNs from enrolment, the course registration number, and then semester 1, 2019. And I've already created those groups on Learn. So if you use that enrolment key, that'll put you into this class group. And once you're in, you'll have access to all of this. Now, yeah, apologies about the split screen there. It's not much we can do about that. Some information in here before you start. So go through here. Primarily, well, I put in an introductory video the other day, so put that up. Information about application for extension. I'm certainly hoping people don't require extensions. If things are looking like you may need an extension or so, please let me know sooner rather than later. One aspect about this subject, as I mentioned before, it is relatively fast-paced. We're getting you from single-story, simple residential through to multi-story commercial within 18 weeks. That's a lot. There are 3 major reports to hand up over the semester, and then you also got to share your resource library with me as well, and I'll go into that a little bit later. So you'll be building up a resource library and doing a bit of a research scrapbook online, and then also producing 3 reports over these next 18 weeks. So that's that's about a month for each one of these tasks. It's not a huge amount of time, and there's a fair bit of research that has to go in there. So if it's obviously things happen, I want you all to get the best out of this subject, and I want you all to pass and to flourish in your studies. So give me a heads up as soon as possible if things are difficult. Obviously, yes, there is that avenue for application for extension, but do understand that it does start pushing things back toward the end of the semester as well if we have to employ that. But here's all the information for that application for extension. The crux of it is you have to notify me within a week before something's due that you need an extension. But obviously, of course, for some situations there are extenuating circumstances where that can't happen as well. Bit of information here on advanced building studies as well. So that's the business unit in which we are within TAFE. So feel free to go through those at your own leisure. Some course information. So a lot of what I teach in this class, a lot of what I teach in this class is the things that I identify, little bits of knowledge and so on that I identify that are handy for people, that will help you to go on your way for research. But as I said before, the bulk of what you guys will do is that research and that and producing those reports and that research library. That's driven by this up here, which is the unit of competency. Every single subject has a national framework that we have to adopt for assessing, that gives us the guideline as to what should be assessed and what should be taught, etc. So it is a lot of academic language. Read it if you wish, but that's basically my job, is to ensure that everything that we cover within here, or everything that's assessed, meets all the little bits and pieces of this. But yeah, I guess essentially get a bit of, if you wish to get a bit of an idea of the subjects, the bones of this subject early on, have a look at that. I've got a couple of guides up here on referencing and how to reference. I will certainly not be a fascist about about referencing technique. I don't expect italics, comma, etc. For your referencing. What I do need to know though are your sources. So you have to make it clear that when you're, or particularly if you're using somebody else's work, grabbing phrases that have been written by other people, that's clearly spelled out where that has come from. But also beyond that, I'm interested to know where this information is coming from, and this is going to be important for you as well for compiling, all your library, all of your information as well, is that you know where things are coming from and you can quickly recall things as well. So referencing is very important. Have a look at these two guides on how to reference, and then program for semester 1, 2019. So that's gives a bit of an outline of what we'll be covering. In the past, my program's been a little bit flexible as well, not entirely set in stone, because if we can get out and we can be seeing some things on sites and going through things and grabbing an opportunity to see some stuff, I'll clearly I'll happily muck around with that a little bit to take those opportunities. Crux of it is though that we've got these 4 tasks to complete throughout that time. Now the due dates are put in that semester 1 guide, but also there's another section purely for assessments on the learn page here where all that information is clearly spelled out for you as well. So we've got the OneNote research and filing task. Has anybody used Microsoft OneNote or anything? Yeah. Cool. So you're familiar with it already. Have you found it a good tool? Yeah. Yeah. What we'll be doing with that is I'll be asking you to set up a dedicated OneNote page, which you all have access to through Office 365 as students when you log in to the portal. And on there you can produce essentially like a bit of an informal scrapbook that has sections and subsections for collating all of your research. So you might go project 1, project 2, project 3, and then in project 1 that's split between floor structural systems and wall structural systems and things like that, and then you might have other sections, concrete and whatever. I could show you some of the things I've put together on OneNote for my own work. So I'll be asking.
So within a method report, what do you mean with that method report?
Right. Well, so the report is about materials and methods. So materials and methods, and then you have to report on that. I'll go through those reports. So we've got our OneNote, but one thing OneNote is not good for, I find, is and just your files in Microsoft typically work better for this, is collating a repository for design guides, etc. So I'll ask that you produce your OneNote and that you get a whole lot of research happening on there that you can share with me, and I can see that being updated as you're working on it. But then also, I want to see that you're setting aside files and dedicating a filing system to putting all of your design guides into, so that you can quickly and easily find all those design guides. I don't set any requirements beyond that, beyond being the filing system that you adopt should be easily navigable by anybody who's unfamiliar with it. So if I was to go on and you said, Mike, come on my computer and please find this design guide for me, I should be able to find that. I should be able to work my way through your filing system logically to find all of those design guides. So set up your filing system in a logical fashion where you can keep all of your PDFs of various different things. Then, using that research and that information, you're required to produce 3 reports. Now they're fairly large reports, but what I have done for you, and this is what happens in Office. Nobody, well, yeah, look, I've written thousands of reports. None of them I've authored from scratch. Always been there's a certain pro forma. Yes, you'll be taking things out, adding things in, but pretty much in the workplace you'll always have some guideline of how a report should be written, and these report pro formas that you fill out. That's what I provided for you here. So I provided for you headings and subheadings, all organised in this fashion for you to fill in the information into. So that makes the report writing a fair bit simpler. But what I'm not assessing is your ability to write reports. I'm assessing your ability to get information and get that information from your repository into that report for sharing with somebody else. So I've produced those report pro formas for you. Probably a good thing to have a look at those fairly early on, and use that as a bit of a guide also.
Those reports have to be brief and clear, because they shouldn't be 100 pages. Who is able to read 72 pages report when you're building construction?
Yes, that is a very good point. Yes, reports are not essays, and they're not theses. It's about being brief and to the point. It's about, if I ask for a thing, I want to know about that thing. I don't want to know anything more about that thing than specifically what has been asked for. So exactly, reports should be concise and to the point. They should, however, cover everything that is necessary. So it takes some judgment to work out, okay, these are the important points of information. This is what needs to be included. What I am most certainly not happy with people Googling something at the last minute, grabbing a page of text and chucking it in. That's not gonna cut the mustard. I'm not gonna sift through and find the bits of information. That's what you are being assessed for your ability to do, is to do that research, pull the important points out and get that into the report. So yeah, very good point. So a little bit more information. Yeah, so as I said, we'll be taking you from single story residential through to multi-story commercial over these 18 weeks. That's going to be split between those 3 reports. Our first report is going to be on a Class 1 building. Now, look, is there anybody knows what I mean when I say Class 1 building?
A little bit. It was briefly touched over in previous class I had yesterday.
Okay, yeah. So you got into building classifications. Yeah. And what was that class?
That was structure analysis, things like that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because that's something you'll go through a lot in compliance for anybody who's also doing compliance this semester. But the National Construction Code has different classifications for buildings, and the reason we have there's many reasons we have different classifications for buildings is because they need to be built differently. We need different safety features. We need different features such as stairways, access, but also access for fire services, etc., and emergency services. So we have different classifications for buildings. Our Class 1 building, they're our separate residences, or residences which are joined. The difference between a Class 1 and a Class 2 building, so Class 2 is also residential, but Class 2 can have another residence on top of it. Class 1 is an autonomous building, or shares a party wall with another building but doesn't have another residence on top of it. So that's your standard house or your masonette. So that's what our first report is going to be on, is a house, and the site we've got where the house is going to be built is up here on Shepherd's Hill Road, so fairly close by. Class 2 building, so that's going to be our second report. That's our multi-story residential. So we've got a fairly simple building for that, a block of 4 units, and then after that our multi-story commercial. So Class 5 and 6, they're office buildings. Well, Class 5 is office, Class 6 is retail.
But yesterday we learned there is something till Class 10.
Yes. Yep. I'll go through the building classes. Yeah, I'll go through everything for that. Yes.
In our schedule, there is no Class 10.
No. So for this course, we're not covering Class 10, and we don't have that necessity to include a Class 10 component. So, but that class that Ramirican is referring to, that's they're ancillary structures. So that's a garage, a swimming pool, a shed, a retaining wall, a stowing hole, even toilet blocks, I think, come under Class 10 as well. So it's any of these structures that are not intended for habitation and for continual use, but for ancillary purposes. So we've got those classes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. What we're in here is a Class 9 building. So this is an institutional building. But I'll go through those classes of building just a little bit later this morning.
Is this the same assessment requirement for the certificate 4 and diploma? I think it should be a bit different. So.
Yeah. Yes. The assessment requirements for certificate 4 and diploma are coming close together. But for diploma, you study it over a much longer period. So you're expected to spend about 18 weeks on residential. So what you have to produce for the diploma is far more in depth into the residential.
It's a bit before, which is, so I don't need to go, not much information as a diploma.
Yes, yeah, that's it. So do keep your reports brief. So for certificate 4, because we're pushing through so quickly, it is about getting those important bits of information down. But they're not as detailed a report. Now, does anybody? I guess look, I think it's fairly safe to assume everybody in this room knows about the Grenfell Tower. Yeah. Anybody who doesn't know about the Grenfell Tower? Or, yeah. Cool. So it was in London. Was it last year? Was it 2017. There's a large residential building in central London that caught alight, and it was really quite tragic. A lot of people died, and basically it can very easily be traced back to the choice of cladding on the building. Yes, it was started by a refrigerator, but the way in which the fire spread was as a result of the cladding chosen for the renovation of the building. Now that's aluminium sandwich panel cladding, and how to say it, that story just keeps evolving. So Grenfell Tower has not happened in isolation. We've had a series of fires in Sydney and Melbourne of large multi-storey buildings also catching alight and with fire spreading incredibly rapidly because of that aluminium sandwich panel cladding. Authorities are trying to deal with that because it is a very common product, and we'll take a walk at some point through this semester, and I'll show you sections around here that have some of that aluminium sandwich panel cladding. It is about the extent of its use and the way in which it's used, which makes it either safe or dangerous. But in a nutshell, what it is, it's a thin layer of aluminium, and then so we've got one thin layer of aluminium here like this, and then we have a section of polyethylene in between and another layer of aluminium. So that's our polyethylene in there. So polyethylene, that's derived through a chemical process from oil, and it's highly flammable. If we get an ignition source on the base of that little piece of polyethylene, and that aluminium sandwich panel is only about this thick. It's about 4 mil thick, well, actually no, even less than that. But it's very very thin layer. But if we get an ignition source on the base of that, this can start burning. Aluminium sheets can start opening up. It will burn faster, and it will ignite the panel above it, which ignites the panel above that, and bits drop down and ignite bits down lower as well. It's now that's that disaster is pretty much squarely on the choice of that material, and so it is incredibly important for us as designers, as drafters, to understand how materials will behave and what they will do. So it's not just I guess the real danger is not just in structural, but also in claddings, etc., in those material choices. Beyond that, also another topical thing has been the Opal Tower in Sydney. Has everybody heard about that?
Is that the one that was the one story with that one house unit that they put it out before it spread?
No, that was the fire. That was just like a bit over a week ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, no,
yeah.
The same purpose, like the same problem.
And
they were talking about maybe that there was a lot of other buildings and that they would have to look at taking them down potentially, not a building, but taking off the cladding. As a potential solution. That's what I thought. That's
bang on. Opal Tower is something different, but in getting back to that aluminium sandwich panel cladding, it is a massive issue for authorities to address, because there are thousands of buildings in use that are clad in the aluminium sandwich panel cladding. But no, the open tower, that's another thing that's sort of unfolding where it's a new construction and it's got significant structural issues and things are coming out of the works with that. But it's, you know, so basically it's a large multi-story residential apartment complex that the people pay a lot of money to buy into, and it's got some major structural issues, and so people have been allowed back in there, but of course, you know, people who have bought into this apartment complex have lost, you know, thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars in the value of these places because nobody really wants to buy into there. And some of that can be traced back to poor workmanship, but other issues within that building can be traced back to poor design and poor detailing, not getting the details right about some concrete elements, about grouts and things like that as well. Oh, yes. I thought you were going to say something.
Oh, no,
yeah.
sorry.
Yeah. So, yeah, incredibly important for us to understand these materials, how they should be used, all of the architectural and the construction details that are required for their implementation. Also, on that point, so yeah, aluminum sandwich panel cladding. Well, it's a thing about safety. It's also a thing about finances as well. But on that safety, we have a body called Safe Work SA. Now they ensure that people, so they uphold the OH&S regulations. You have to on that exactly, but they ensure that people can provide a safe workspace for employees, and that employees don't endanger other employees or themselves. And they produce a lot of guidelines as to how everything should be done. They also ensure that, they police that building designers and construction professionals will maintain that safe space for people to be working in. We have to think about that as building designers to ensure that we are not designing things that are going to be dangerous to install or dangerous for the occupants of that building later on. And there are severe fines for that. So reckless conduct that exposes a person to risk or death or serious injury. So individual fine of $300,000 or 5 years imprisonment. It's also important for us to be cognizant of that in our design. So I'll get into OneNote, or I'll show you an example of that first in a minute. But in this section here, it details out, well, it starts to detail what I'll be expecting of you for producing your informal research repository. So show evidence that you're able to research and gather information. You copy and paste all your research material into Microsoft OneNote. Actually, I won't read it off the page, but you can read that at your own leisure, and we'll move a little bit more quickly into there. So that's just a screenshot I grabbed. I just produced that and put that up there, showing I've got project 1, project 2, project 3. It's 3 separate sections, and then in project 1, I split it up into concrete raft slab, and then I've got some pictures.
Can we email our work to you? Or
yeah.
I prefer that way because I don't know if we use it.
Yeah. Oh no,
I never used it before, so I don't want to stress about extra things.
Don't stress about it. Muck around with it. Look. Everybody does have to get into it. You have access to it, and and so have a go. And if you have any issues with it, by all means, let me know. But start getting there. Now there's this little bit up the top. Left-hand corner of the screen, a little person on there that says share. So you can click on that and then put my email address in there, and you can share your OneNote with me. Once you've shared that with me, I will be able to see the contents of that OneNote that you've set up. I won't be able to see the contents of all of them. Like, so you can set up different OneNotes for your own work, etc. But the one you set up for this subject, you can share that with me, then I can see the contents of that, and I can give you some feedback, etc. So, see if I get I'll have to log into the portal just quickly. Oh, there we go. No, I'm already logged in. So, when you as students log in, or do you get that same interface? Fantastic.
Just short of the last two of them.
Short of the last two. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's good. Yeah. Have access to these to give yourself grades. That might undermine the system slightly.
Nancy, 5 years in prison.
Yeah. So click on Office 365. Sure. And so this is the one that we'll be wanting. So OneNote. So I've got a host of OneNotes that I've created, plus also some that other students have shared with me as well. I won't go through other students' work with you, but you can produce a whole series of notebooks for yourself for various different things for research repositories. So this is the one I mentioned before. I've just been through the process of building license. This is what I produced it's part of what I produced in preparation for my interview. So I've got a section here, design guides with some links to a few things, aspects of compliance. So I've got minister specifications, minister's codes, National Construction Code, education materials. I think there's much on products because I had a repository also from much of that. Aspects specific to the builder's license, like that, and then things in there, and that's the main one. So I've grabbed specific little bits out of the NCC that I think are important. So this is the way in which it can be used. We can grab images, put images in there. We can put let's go to statement of compliance. So we can put a series of links in there. So I can use that, and that will link me directly back to a page. I can write things in here. So I can go, okay, well that's going to be an important note. Write things. So elements of the statement of compliance. Produce that myself.
Is that how you're expecting our work to be done, or?
Yeah. So what I'm expecting you to do is to produce some categories, and then produce some subcategories. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no worries. Produce some subcategories, and then put some important bits of information in there. So use that. It's like an online version of a scrapbook, where there's some important things you want to remember, and that can be added to, deleted, and mucked around with as you go. So I'm wanting that you produce one of these, and it's very easy to add. So we've got add section down here. So I could add another section. I won't do that right now. All I need to do is put a name in there, press OK, I've added another section, or I can add another page, and then I'll just put the title in there, and that gives me that page title. So let's do that. Do that now. In test, and let's see if I can. That's the way, isn't it? I'll use the snipping tool. we are. New snip.
But we can go out, we can have our own way how we will do it.
Yeah. Produce.
Yeah.
Produce it in your own way. Gee, that's such a way, really. Move that then.
You can make it smaller.
What's that?
I think you can make it smaller.
You can make it smaller?
Maybe.
Yeah. So I don't want to stop recording. It'll be. Jeez.
You could make the thing no longer full screen.
Oh, yeah.
So you'll have to move that bar over a bit.
Yeah, oh, yeah, gotcha.
It's not like
Yeah. Arrow. Yep.
yeah.
Great.
The other one.
Oh, yeah, the other one. Yeah. There we go. And then close that one. We'll go back to this one that had open. Oh, okay. I won't muck around with that too much. But yes, you can produce your OneNote and add bits and pieces to that as you go. So the instructions for starting a OneNote are there on the Learn page. However, you probably won't need them. I imagine go into Office 365, click on OneNote, and then produce your own OneNote from there. But we can talk about that next week. I suggest after today's class or sometime over the week, go on there, get that started, and then if you have any issues with that, let me know. But that OneNote can then be shared with other people. So add my email address in here in a couple of weeks' time. Once you've got it all set up, share it with me, and I can see that. So that's part of our assessing the subject.
So what did you say you called that document, your research
Research repository.
repository?
Yeah. Well, I just use that term for as in somewhere you're putting stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's not your entire repository though. So that's generally a good place for some of your informal stuff where you're mucking around, you're finding stuff on the internet, and you're putting it in there. But you'll also have let's go back to some of my builder's license. Oh no, not that one. Or building resources maybe. Design guides. Okay, I've only got a couple in that one there. It's mostly on the computer back at home. But I'll produce a series of files like this and subfolders where I keep all of these files there. So I'm wanting you to produce a OneNote where you're doing a lot of your informal research and grabbing bits and pieces and sharing that with me, but then also get a screenshot of your filing system, expand out the folders like this, and then take a screenshot of that and submit that as well to show me that you've been compiling a whole series of design guides and important information to help you with your further work. And you're going to have to share that with me early in the semester, but then also resubmit that with every assignment or with every research report that you submit, and that shows me that you're continuously updating this information as we go along. That's one of the things that we have to assess in this class, is to see that you create those research repositories, but then you continuously update them throughout the semester.
I don't understand what we have to do. Screenshot of what?
Oh, okay, so do it. So you'll produce your OneNote, but then you'll also produce.
Is that OneNote? Is that a requirement? If it's not requirement,
it is a requirement.
It's required.
Yeah. So 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 one of the assessments is that you produce your OneNote research repository where you're putting all of the information, and also another part of that assessment is that you produce folders and subfolders for putting all of your design guides into. So all of the important information that you pull off the net, which isn't easily stored within OneNote, that you put all that in a series of folders and subfolders, expand, and then to show me evidence that that's what you've done, expand them out. Like that. So, and then take a screenshot of that, just like I did that snipping tool earlier on. Take a screenshot of that and submit that onto Learn. Does that make sense? Yeah. So what I have to assess in this subject is your ability to carry out research and collate all of that research. So I have to see that you're getting all of this information and that you're putting it into a place. And it says in that unit of competency that has to be to a specified in a specified manner, as you would have to do in a workplace if you're working for somebody else. So that's the manner that I've specified, that you use OneNote for grabbing all your informal research, and that you use folders and subfolders for collating all of your important reference material.
Will we be given any topic where we have to research on the topic, or it will be generalized in the materials?
Yeah, so the topics that you'll be researching on, that's based around your 3 reports that you have to produce. So we have to produce one report on a residential building, which I'll give you all the information about. We have to produce a report on a multi-residential building, and then on a commercial building. And then within those 3 reports that you have to write, I've produced the office pro formas that have detailed in there all of the aspects that you have to produce some commentary on. And that will be your guide for research. So that tells you the aspects that you have to research. So I think it's probably a good time for us then to go into the section assignments and submissions. So I've got little bits of information about that in the before you start let's get started, but I've pulled everything together here under the one thing. So if you're thinking about, oh yeah, assignments, what do you have to do for assignments? You can go to this one place, and it's all organised for you there. So what we've just been talking about now is complete 2 separate filing systems, formal and informal, and provide screenshots of these filing systems. Must be submitted by 11th of March. So the first time you share that with me, submit that, is by the 11th of March. Now, you know, some of you might have a little bit of time today, and you go away and you get that all set up today, and you'll start populating that with stuff. That's fine, but you've got 3 weeks from now in which to get that underway. Then our first report is due a month after, 12th of April. The next report is due a month after that, 10th of May. And then the final one is due 1 month after that, on the 14th of June. So we've got 3 weeks, 1 month, 1 month, 1 month. So your OneNote and filing task instructions are there, and then this is where that all gets submitted. So to submit something, you click on that. Yeah, okay, my interface will look different than yours. You will have a little box that you can drag and drop things into. It's fairly user friendly, so it'll be so I don't expect you to have any issues with it. People don't tend to have issues with it, but if you do, let me know. So click on that link, and that's where you can drop in your screenshots as a submission to me. Then we've got our research task 1 instructions, and then task 1 office template for report. So that office template, well, I'll open that up now. That gives you headings and subheadings to show you exactly what you're going to have to provide some commentary on. So it says section 1 structure, floor structural option 1, and that options, and in the assignment literature you're given what those instructions will be. So or what that structural option will be. That will be a concrete raft slab. So look at that concrete raft slab. Think about sustainability considerations, embodied energy, thermal mass, life cycle analysis. Is there anybody in this class who would want to tackle that for me right now? Provide some insight.
No, it's fine.
No. God. So let's think about a concrete raft slab on the ground. So raft slab is probably the most common footing system for houses in South Australia. It's a big concrete slab on the ground. Does it have a high embodied energy or a low embodied energy? Now, I'm not expecting everybody to know these things right now, but some of you will. Yeah, it does have a fairly high embodied energy. There's, the aggregate, the sand has to be carved in to create the cement powder, which makes the concrete bind together. Requires a lot of energy to bake to get that energy in there. It has fairly high embodied energy.
Best thermal performance.
Yeah, what's that?
Best thermal performance.
But excellent thermal performance, and that's the next bit there. So thermal mass. Can anybody enlighten us as to what thermal mass is? And don't worry, we'll be going through all of this as we work our way through. But just trying to, pick the brains for us.
It's according to the temperature change, the cooler will be bigger, shrink, so shrinking.
Yeah, it's the ability of a material to store temperature. So that concrete out there, if I get sun shining on that concrete all day, that concrete will heat up, and it won't lose its heat straight away. Like if I close it off to the sun, if I take a piece of that concrete out somewhere into a dark room, it's got to stay warm, and that's got to give off heat for hours. Concrete has a very high thermal mass, so it has the ability to absorb a lot of heat and to give that heat out. So something like a concrete slab, it takes a lot of electrical energy to produce, or a lot of energy to produce the components, but then it has a very high thermal mass. If that's used correctly in a building, it can take in that heat during the day and then give it out at night time, regulating the warmth of a building and providing a very comfortable building without any additional input of energy apart from the sun. So so the report pro forma or the office template provides you with a guide as to what things I want. So first up, that one, sustainability considerations. I want you to tell me, it's high embodied energy, low embodied energy. Has it got high thermal mass, low thermal mass? What's its life cycle analysis? What can we do with concrete once it's been pulled up? Is it going to live? Is it going to exist as a structural element for a very long time? Does it have very long useful life? That sort of thing. So I want you to provide commentary on that. Now keep your statements quite brief and to the point. So for each of the reports, I've provided you with that performer. So what you have to do is you have to fill in the blanks. I've given you the headings, and you have to fill in the content. And those headings will be a guide for what I'm looking at. Back to concrete slab. So fire resistance properties. Probably a lot of you could answer that right now. Installation process considerations. Think about, okay, what's really important about installing a concrete slab? What do we have to get right, etc. And then I've got down here manufacturer's installation details. Like I said before, with a lot of construction, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. A lot of details have been worked out before. Now, it is a very good skill for you to be able to think about construction details and to be able to go, okay, this is how we can install this thing, right? Because you will do that. Sometimes you will have to think about how things have to be used in a non-conventional fashion. Certainly, if, like, for the work that I used to do for a structural engineer, repairing and reinstating buildings, that was a lot of that. Because we've got half the building that we want to keep, the other half of the building has to be demolished and rebuilt, etc. How do we knit that new construction into the old? Designing a lot of bespoke details. You will do that, but also what you'll be doing is getting a lot of details that have already been designed previously, or common ways of doing things, and that's where your OneNote can come in really handy, because you can be doing your research online about things and think, oh, that's a great detail, or I like that explains that really clearly.
Again, I'm back to OneNote. So you want to get, like, for example, I'm researching something, you want to screenshot what I'm researching. Is that what we have to do?
That's one of the things you have to do. So one of the things you have to do you decide what's important, what's of interest to you. So
you want to see that?
Yeah.
What I was reading, for example, I'm researching about the concrete, cement, whatever it is, and you take a screenshot of that and attach that or whatever, I don't know. That's what you want, actually.
Yeah, so we'll go.
And links that for example, links, is that have to be our own work or?
No. So it's about using OneNote as a research tool, as a plate. So it's not so much about you showing me, like, I don't want to know, okay, you visited that site and you produced this and this and this. It's not for me primarily, it's for you. So you use that OneNote as a research tool to be able to collect all of this information so it can be easily put into here. Now, you won't be collecting only information for this, or you may, right? So you might go, right, all I care about is this subject, and I produce that only for this subject. But the thing is, you're going to continue to work from here on, and it's a great thing for you to be compiling lots of research and lots of details and interesting information that you use for this and that you use for other projects going forward. So the basic requirement is that you carry out that research for this subject and for yourself, but I want to see that you're using that tool, that you're using it as a tool for placing all of that information. And what I was just saying is, when it comes to details, so what you can be doing is, so let's say you're researching concrete and you go on to there's a website called CCA, Concrete Cement Aggregates Australia, really good website. You go on there and there'll be some details about how reinforcing is included within a concrete slab, and the correct coverage, the correct distance from the edge, and all this sort of thing, that's bar size, things like that. And there'll be a detail, cut through a slab, and you go, that's a really good detail. I like that. This is a very trustworthy source. You might take a snip of that, chuck it into OneNote, because you think, look, I might use that for my report later, or I might use that to remind me of how that detail is done in the future. So use that OneNote for putting all those images in there, and then later on you can go, oh, that's right, I've got an installation detail here for a raft slab, or I've got an installation detail for something. Put it in there. Draw things if you wish. If you think, oh look, I know a really good detail for doing this sort of thing, draw it. By all means, that's an excellent skill to develop and a skill that you can use. But however you achieve this, it's important that you include some manufacturer's details or installation details about things. Yeah.
Installation process, is that important to put in?
Of course, yeah, because with this report, we're reporting to somebody who's thinking about, the design process of a building and possibly supplying that to a client. So they're going to have to be making make decisions, and you're going to have to be making some recommendations. But installation process is very important for the design of buildings. We can't just go, all right, let's use concrete for everything, because that might hold up construction for a very long time because we can't load it for 5 days, etc. We have to think about how do these materials go in, and when do they go in? Do we have to do the floor before we do the walls? That sort of thing.
So, like, potentially in the real world, we're creating this document for a client to be building a new home, so it's for someone that doesn't necessarily know and just laying out the options for them.
Well, the scenario that I've painted in the assignment literature for these reports are that you are working for a building designer, and then the last project you're working for an architect. So they already have an idea about these things, but you're being their assistant, helping them, producing this information for them. But that information might be information that they would then go on to share with the client. So follow it as I've set it out in the report, saying, look, I want to know about these things, because they're all key factors in making that decision. And so,
once again, so for residential dwelling, what is for example, it will not be too much difference for a multi-story unit it will in a floor structure. I mean, in a concrete slab. It's in a process. It's.
No, things are going to be very different. So these slabs that we're standing on right now, yes, you could use those in a residential context. I've seen possibly about 2% of standard residential builds. This type of slab that we're standing on, primarily, this type of slab we're standing on, the way in which this is produced, it's for commercial buildings. There are different approaches for different reasons, and look, we'll get into all of this, as we go through. Many of these questions actually require very, very long-winded, detailed answers to them. But yes, there are significant differences between the way we build for different situations.
I mean, for unit, if there are single units, what is the difference in a concrete if it's a one single story building, or single units if it's a 5, for example, units?
Okay, well, just
no difference in a process.
Well, no, it's okay. Yeah, okay. If we're doing slab on ground, there's not a great deal of difference. However, the thing is, in Adelaide we have very reactive soil that heaves a lot when it gets moisture in it and pushes things up. If we have slabs that are very long run and it's all a monolithic structure, the reinforcing detail of that slab is going to be significantly different than if we did little individual slabs. And if we have conjoined building elements between those buildings, we're going to have to run dowels between those slabs as well to ensure that they move the same. But you probably.
I just want to ask you, how many options do we provide?
So that's detailed for you.
Concrete, steel, and timber.
And
which floor use which kind of buildings? Should we provide this information?
Yeah, so you are provided with all of that information. So the report templates outline that for you. So we've got floor structural option 1, floor structural option 2, and then floor structural option 3, and then we're up to wall structural options. So 2 of those, roof cladding options, and then wall cladding options.
So
2 of each.
Do we choose ourselves, or do you provide them back?
Yeah, so I provide you with those options. So we have the report templates that give you that detailed guidance, and then you have the assignment literature and the project brief that tells you this is what the building is looking like, this is its context, these are the materials that I want you to research in your report. So you're bringing those 2 things together, plus your research, to produce that report. So all that information is given to you. So some of the information is given to you in this. And then we'll have a look at research task 1 instructions. So those task 1 instructions, I give you a project brief. Now it's a very brief outline, so you're a junior drafter engaged to produce research for building designer working on a simple residential project. The proposed dwelling is to be a small single-storey dwelling of all new construction. Located on a standard residential allotment at the address of 174 Shepherd's Hill Road, Bellevue Heights. Also, this is an important thing probably to point out. Please note this address is for contextual purposes only. Do not visit the site. Yeah, we get, sometimes we know the people at these, we have to give you sites for that context because things differ between sites. Part of this assignment is that you work out what the on-site, the dedicated fire water supply is going to be. That is site specific to an extent.
Wind ratings.
What's that?
Wind.
Yeah, wind ratings, all these things. Corrosion. So there's many different factors which are site specific, and so we need to give you a site. But there'll be somebody living there. I don't want people driving out the front and then being freaked out like, we keep getting cars pulling up across the road and they're taking pictures and staring at us. Like, yeah, look, don't visit the site. You've got no need to visit the site. You've got Google Earth, you've got SA Map Viewer. You can drop a little man on Google Earth onto the street and look at it if you wish, but you won't get any information.
So this is actually a site address, real.
Yes, yeah.
No, but we have to do like to write about. So I didn't get it. What is actually? So
So I give you an address.
Yes.
I give you an address in this project brief to provide you context, because you're going to require context for some things that you research, and that'll become clearer as we go along. So you have an address there, but please don't visit the site. Was it in a nutshell? So one of the things we need context for is like, what's the topography doing now? So the allotment is characterised by moderately sloping topography, estimated 1 in 6 slope. So you've got some topography there, and you can go onto SA Map Viewer, and we'll talk about SA Map Viewer later for anybody who hasn't used that program. And you can get topography and things off that. You can get an idea of the layout of the land and what that's like. But I've outlined it there for you, a 1 in 6 slope. So that means over 6 metres, so slightly less than the width of this room, it drops by 1 metre. If we're building an 8 metre wide house and we need a metre either side of that house, we've got to be cutting into that earth probably about 1.5 metres. We're going to have to retain 1.5 metres of soil on one side from where we cut in. So I give you those things to think about. Okay, in that situation, is it good for a raft slab where we have to cut into the soil, or should we have a suspended floor where we're up on stilts, we don't have to do any disturbance of that soil, etc. So giving you this context.
soil.
Yeah.
Why we have to think? There are engineers who think about the soil. We as a designer don't need to think much about the soil.
Okay.
They already did their job. We already got on paper. It's already is done. When that comes, when we start design, already they did their job.
Yeah. The funny thing about being a designer is, or a drafter, is the better drafter and the better designer will have a higher level of insight into everything that impacts upon that design. Yes, certainly, we should always know our limitations. We should always say, look, that has to be designed by an engineer. The engineer touches that, right? And we pass that process and the legal liability onto the person who's responsible for that. But it's also important for us to understand the interactions of all this, to know a little bit about everything. Yes, it is a dangerous person that knows only a little bit about something and decides to provide advice on that. I'm not expecting that, but I am expecting you to consider these things in the design process. So maximise the benefit for your employer and for your client. So yes, you will have to know about different types of soils. Now you won't be designing the footing systems. You won't be specifying the bar width and how many reinforcing bars in there. Look, and there are Australian standards for that. There's a process that you can actually do that in accordance with the Australian standard. I'm not expecting you to go to there, but what I am expecting you to know is like, okay, we've got sloping land. What do we do about that? How do we approach that? Because you can't just keep going back and forth to an engineer with lots of things. It gets very expensive. If you know the good approaches from the beginning, and then you approach the engineer and say, look, I need this to be engineered.
Engineers only rely on people who they do that. We can't, as designer, we can't do anything. I wouldn't rely even on architect when it's a structure, and when it's about the structure, only engineers, not architect, not designer, that's nothing. Only engineers can do it. We only can know something about that, but that's not our part of our job.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so you got to know your limitations. But what I hope to be doing in this class is filling you in and giving you the background and the insight into these things to understand those various different processes, so that you are able to talk to the engineers, that you are able to know where your limitations reside, and to what extent you can build on that and take things on. But that will become clearer and clearer and clearer over the next 18 weeks about those things. But
So all the components have to work together. So does the floor have to be able to support?
Yeah. So we've got to be thinking about those things. Now, so once again, yes, an engineer will give a definitive answer. But we have to think about this. If let's say we're doing stone walls. Now, it's a no-brainer to say stone walls are heavy, right? And then we do a lightweight timber flooring structure, right? And I think it's fairly much a no-brainer. Like if the client says, look, I want a stone house on this sloping block, you're not going to go, oh, well, look, we can do a suspended timber floor, and then we'll do stone walls on that, like cavity masonry or something like that. It's a no-brainer to go, look, that's not going to work, right? We're not going to be able to design it to have enough timber to support that, right? So we're not going to take that to an engineer and go, hey, can you engineer this for me, right? It's about thinking about those things. If we're going to go with a lightweight flooring system that has very little load-bearing capacity, we're going to have a lightweight walling system and lightweight roofing system to go with that. We're probably going to go a sheet roof, which is 10 kilograms per square metre, as opposed to a tile roof, which is 90 kilograms per square metre. Yeah, I'm not expecting you to be, experts in any of this, but what I am expecting you to do is gather those bits of information to be able to guide sensible decisions for those, like for clients, etc., who are far less informed, and pull that all together in a sensible way. So yes, we are thinking about how elements interact with each other, and it's not just about weight. You've got when you put several different metals together, they have one will corrode, one will pick up the ions, etc. So we've got our topography, we've got our soils. Now, does anybody know about soil classifications in this room?
I know, because I'm reading this.
So we've got a lot of our soils in Adelaide are reactive soils. You put water in there, it swells up. Not all our soils are reactive, so we've got A, S, M, H, H1, H2, E, and then P class. From the top, our A is incredibly stable soil, S is sandy soil, M is moderately reactive. So, and then you've got highly reactive, then highly reactive 2, which is and then extremely reactive, and then problem class. So the problem is something else. So M class, that's sort of in the middle, is the lower middle to what we can expect in Adelaide. That's not a very bad case scenario. I chose M class soils because if you read a building contract, you'll see that it specifies as a standard in either master rules or HIA contracts. They'll say the footings have been designed, or this contract allows for Class M soils, right? So they say we'll put aside $10,000 for footings based on Class M soil, and then you soil engineer, or they'll do bore logs, and they'll go, okay, well this is H2, therefore your footings are going to cost you $25,000, and you've got a $15,000 variation. Right, so that class M soil, that's the most commonly referred to classification of soil within your contracts. However, it's probably not the most common classification of soil you'll meet. Around Adelaide, we've got a lot of highly reactive and extremely reactive clay soils. So that's a fairly simple, standard, easy one that's commonly referred to. So not really a problem. Roof pitch 15 degrees, and then floor to ceiling height 24-30. So very standard, very simple build. That's your project brief.
24-30.
What's that?
Floor to
Yeah.
ceiling from 24-30.
Yeah. So pretty much your bog standard ceiling height these days is 2700. Yeah. 24-30. That's a bit more bargain basement type of heights. So with a 24-30 ceiling, you can have two 1200 gyprock sheets and 35mm battens for your ceiling lining, and you got
So our first project will be about this.
Yes. Yeah. So the first report you're doing is for this particular project, and then I've got some floor plans and some elevations. It is an incredibly simple, fairly uninspiring little house, but something that's simple to start with. And then it says in your report, I want you to talk about concrete raft slab, suspended timber framing, suspended steel framing. So this will guide you. And what you can do afterwards today, if you wish, is go grab that report template and start putting in these options into those headings, if you wish. And you can take this and go, all right, well I'm gonna have to like for project one, I'm gonna have to research concrete raft slabs, suspended timber framing, suspended steel framing, etc. Use this.
Can I ask what my sense got a dumb question? I think it was mentioned before when I managed after I came back. We've got two possibilities here in that particular one, the suspended timber framing and the suspended steel framing.
Yeah.
Do we research both and then pick one for the report, or do we?
No, so you report.
We do both.
So you report on all of them.
Okay, and
Yes.
did costing come into it? Or?
Yes, so that is definitely an element. Now some of you will have access to provide access to programs, etc., or books that will enable you to do detailed costings. Others won't. I can't provide you with access. So there's a program called Cordell's, which is a really good estimating program whereby you can put in, this is what I want. I want to know the price for that. I want to know the price for that in Adelaide. What's it going to cost me? And it will tell you. And you can put all these things, and you can basically build a house in the program, and it goes, that's what the house is going to cost with all these things, right? It's a great program. I can't give you access to it, unfortunately. It's expensive for licenses. I've been given one license for free that I can use, and I'll try to weave that into the class if I can. But because now you've got access. So there's the Rawlinson's Construction Guide handbook, and then also Cordell's produce a book, and both of those actually I know at least Rawlinson's Construction Guide is down at that front office. They keep a copy in there.
So we don't actually have a library on site, but for a couple of these books, which are really important, there is a copy down there at that front desk. You can go and have a look at that at any point in time and go, okay, brick veneer, what's going to cost me per linear metre or square metre, etc. You can do that, but I'm not expecting really detailed, nuanced answers to the costings of things. Some of you might be able to provide that. If you're able to provide that, that's fantastic. But I'm only expecting generalisations from people. So, as a generalisation, we can say, well, a concrete raft slab is going to be more expensive to lay than a suspended timber floor. Suspended timber floor is going to be our cheapest out of that, and followed closely by a suspended steel frame.
So we have to write, for example, if it's about the frame, steel or timber, we have to write about the boat. We can't what we choose for our project. So if I picked, for example, timber frame, so I can't write just about timber frame. No, I have to write about the boat.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
But that is a report, 200, 300 pages if you write about everything.
I don't know. I have never. Yeah. No.
Applications. So picking installation wall frame, timber frame, steel frame, how to install. That's a different installation, different completely materials. That is a.
Yeah. Look. It'll be large, but I have. Yeah. Look, I can confidently say I have never received a report of 200 pages or 300. Look, I have received some large ones, right? I've gotten some reports at around 15 pages for people who have been really quite detailed and have really taken the task and run with it. And that's fantastic if you do, because whatever research you're doing in here, you're probably going to refer to it again. This is about helping you on your journey. But yeah, keep your answers brief. It is about the research, and it's about you pulling out those pieces of information which are important. Let the project brief be your guide, and the assignment literature also be your guide as to what you need to research, and then for the detailed things on what you need to produce some commentary on, the office template of the report will provide that guide for you. And I can be fairly sure that you won't be producing a massive report. If you think about, okay, these are the important things, these are the things I've learned about this is what I can say about this, yeah, you should actually be able to be fairly succinct in that. But we'll see. Like we've got 7 weeks until the first one's due. Let's let that idea develop. So yes, you have to research concrete raft slab. You have to research timber framing and steel framing, and then for the wall structure, you've got to research conventional
internal and external, both. Cladding, wall cladding, external.
Yeah, so analyze two wall cladding options. Now these are, yes, okay, I should probably have been a little bit more specific and put external in there. So we're talking about external claddings. Just to clarify that for everybody. So analyze 2 wall cladding options.
We didn't put a Hebel for us, so we can research a Hebel and texture and everything. No, just brick.
Yeah, but we're talking about the first assignment so far. Yeah. So yeah, look. Yes, I have to narrow it down. What I have done in the past is left it open slather and go, hey, yeah, research whatever you want. The issue with that is that the unit of competency says that this is the scope of what you should be researching. And then also, from my experience, I have to think these are the common things that you're going to run into in industry. Yes, I can't cover everything. If you have specific questions about things, I can answer them. Now, Hebel is in the second assignment. So yeah, but I've had to make decisions about that content, and I've had to narrow that down. If you want to research other things, if you've got an interest in in mud brick or various other forms of Adobe or Rand Earth or something like that, by all means research that, and I can give you some insight and knowledge about those specific things as well. We can talk about all those things, but I have to assess everybody on that same basis, and I have to provide that framework for the assessment. So you've got a couple options of wall framing, a couple options of roof framing, roof cladding options, concrete tile, custom or colour-bond steel sheeting. So the two, if you look out the window, what are we going to see? We're going to see, tile roofing and colour-bond custom or sheeting. That's what we're going to see when we look out unless we look at the roof. This one is different, but primarily that's what we're going to see. So you've got those two options, and then wall cladding options, 5% sheet, brick veneer. That's sort of what I'd expect on a tiny little, relatively uninspiring house design. I would expect either one of those two materials, or we might have rendered eagle, possibly, but probably not for that design. Also, what you're going to have to do for this first report is determine the requirements for dedicated fire water supply. So we have to cover services in this subject as well. And in the other two projects, you're going to be told to research some other different services. For this one, we've got to work out what are our on-site water requirements. So it's a simple history of it is that since the Black Saturday fires, things have ramped up a little bit in regards to how we need to equip houses for dealing with bushfires and to enable emergency services to give them the facilities to be able to fight fires around those buildings. And this is what's relatively new, and it's a little bit tricky to work out. But I'll take you through that process of finding out how much water do we need to have on site for the CFS if they rock up at that building. And yes, it's a building in the metropolitan area. You'd think, oh, okay, well, CFS, that's out there. Wherever we have a bushfire attack level that's above low, so we've got low, medium, and high. Anything from medium, high, and flame zone, we have to have some water on site there at CFS, and that's all dictated by what intensity of fire we would expect in that situation, and whether we've got main water supply to that building, etc.
Do we need to add material because houses are built in different terrain? So we can even research, if you like us that we do, because different materials are used in different, for example, on a coastal area, on a hill, so different materials are used for the building. Do we need to research that all?
What's that?
Do we need to research that all? Because different materials for the everything.
Yeah, get to know it, right? Now, look, I understand the point at which you're at. Trust me, my assessment of you and my assessment of the commentary is going to be fair, right? I'm not going to be going, look, I expect these students to be knowing, at the level of somebody who's been studying this for 4 or 5 years or a long time. Now, you might have some really good insight into things, but for what I expect you to understand, trust me, it'll be fair. And the bar is set at a reasonable level. So reports are to use the Office template that can be found on Learn. So we've already seen that. So that's our first assignment. I won't go into task 2 and task 3 yet. We'll have a look at that later on as we go. Well, but yeah, task 2 multi-story, task 3 multi-story commercial, and you've got a little bit more work to do in terms of some energy calculations and things like that for the building. So we get really into the services on that one there. Okay. So that's the assignments, and I guess a fairly good overview of what you'll be doing in this subject. What we'll be focusing on for these first probably it's probably a bit more like 5 to 6 weeks is our residential building. And look, there's a lot of commonality, and there's a lot of commercial processes creeping into residential builds as well. It's pretty high-end residential builds. We're using a lot of commercial materials. But we'll be starting with our class on building. But before we get into that, I'll just quickly run through this. I can't. All right. What we'll also be wanting to have access to is the National Construction Code. Now, I referred to that earlier. Has anybody in this room accessed the National Construction Code before? One?
With that cost.
Yeah.
It'd be fair big, wouldn't it?
It used to be. Now it's free.
Are you kidding?
No, serious. Yeah, it used to be $500. Yeah. When I finished my study, I was staring at the face, down the barrel of, spending $500 on that alone, and then around about $100 or $110 for every single Australian standard that I had to refer to. And the engineering firm I worked for, we had a bookshelf of Australian standards. I'd hate to estimate how much that bookshelf, or the contents of that bookshelf cost.
First of all, try this for South Australia. South Australia in housing.
Oh yes, yeah.
That appreciated existence to begin with. I think I was the last person to buy one of that year of change.
Yeah. So
they cost back then.
Yeah, it was a great impediment to people wanting to start out in the industry and do small stuff, because you've got $500 for your BCA, or was back then as the National Construction Code, and tens of thousands of dollars for Australian standards you have to refer to. As well, everybody in the public has got access to the National Construction Code for free now. So I'll show you where. As students, you have access to all of the Australian standards, right? That is an excellent resource. Use it. Seriously, use it. I heard just recently, and look, it may just be rumour or speculation, or one of these things that is true, but it takes decades, to come to fruition. But there are moves afoot to make the Australian standards free as well. So hopefully in years to come, or in the near future, we'll all have free access to the Australian standards. That's not the case at the moment. But as students, you have access to the Australian standards via the library. We've only got another 25 minutes of this class. Possibly the best use of our time is I'll show you where you go for the National Construction Code first, and then where you go to get the Australian standards. So, National Construction Code, we'll go to a site called ABCB, so Australian Building Codes Board. So Australian Building Codes Board. Now this little silhouette up here, that's your login or your register. So for those who haven't accessed the NCC before, you'll have to register. For those who have, you use your login for that. I'll just log in myself.
ABCB.
Yeah, ABCB. Australian Building Codes Board.
have to use student email address?
You don't know. You can register with whatever email address you want. Just like registering with anything, the email address you put in there is the email address they're going to send that notification to. So you're going to have, whatever's handy for you, because they'll send you an email straight away and you go confirm and gain access. So register as you would with many other things. There's a lot of resources here that you can have a look at. So for specific things. And this is really, really cool as well. When I studied, we had to do a lot of calculations ourselves about roof plumbing and drainage and so on, to size up the box gutter and work out how big that gutter should be for this roof and this rainfall intensity, blah, 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 blah. There's a bunch of things here that do all that for you. It's great. Lighting calculator. All these things, glazing calculator, so as I mentioned, gutters and downpipes. So you've got all that stuff there. Yeah, fantastic tools.
Right about the downpipes and gutters?
No,
just about the roof.
Yeah. So we're primarily concerned with the roof. Look, if you want to know about some of these things and sort of pick my brain about that as we go through. But the important thing is it's about the structure and the claddings, and then the services in general. So things like electricity, air conditioning, dedicated bulbs, these sorts of things. So have a look in these resources, get to know what's there, but the crux of what we're going to be looking for is this, the NCC suite. Have a look at these as well. Be aware that the 2019 version of the National Construction Code is now out for review. It won't be adopted until 1st of May 2019. So that's going to be adopted in several months' time. Probably, like anything, it's good to understand what came before, as well as understanding the current. What I'll be expecting you to be referring to within this class is the 2016 version. So that's what's current. If I was to build something today, and I was going to refer to the National Construction Code, that is what's current. Now come 1st of May, 2019 version will be current. But until 1st of May, that's what's current. Anything you produce commentary on or so at the moment is that. Now, if you, there's not a huge amount of changes happening. Actually, we should say that there's some changes happening in 2019. Won't get into that because I haven't thought through that myself. It's only been out for 4 weeks for review. But yeah, if you focus your research on, based on 2016, that's fine. And this is the complete series. I'd say just download all of those, get them all. You can get the individual ones. You can get volume 1, and we go volume 2. They're the ones that you are concerned with as drafters and designers. Volume 1 and volume 2. You'll see in the suite there's also volume 3, and then there's also a guide to the National Construction Code. That guide can be handy as well. It's still fairly weighty reading, but it puts some of the things in more common terms. It explains things a little simpler. But volume 3 you won't be referring to. That's for plumbers and electricians. So that's specifically for them. By all means, learn things like, so there's Australian AS 3500 for plumbing and drainage. That's a great one to learn. And there are guidelines about where PowerPoints should be put in buildings in terms of their proximity to water sources, hand basins, things like that, right? Yeah, that's important for you to learn as designers, but primarily you're not going to, volume 3 is not going to be of much interest to you, just letting you know. Volume 1 and volume 2 are what we're concerned with. Now, I'll leave it at that for now. We'll come, actually, possibly in the slides, we'll cover a little bit. Oh, that's right. We have to have a look at Australian standards. So no, I'll close that one. Right. Just bring you back to this just briefly, because we won't get into that further in today's class. We've got to go into Australian standards. But our volume 1 and our volume 2. Volume 1 is about commercial buildings, class 2 through to 9. And we touched on classes ever so briefly earlier on. So class 2, that's multi-residential. 3 are hotels and the like. 4 is a building within, like a residential building within an office complex. 5 offices, 6 retail, 7 is industrial and manufacturing car parks, 8 is some institutional manufacturing facilities and processing, and 9 is institutional buildings such as schools, aged care, things like that. So that's our different classifications. Volume 1 covers classifications 2 to 9. So multi-storey residential through to commercial. Volume 2 covers class 1 buildings and class 10 buildings. So class 1 are our residential, detached residential buildings, and class 10 are our ancillary structures like garages, etc. So we have those 2 volumes. So anybody want to guess at what volume of the National Construction Code we'll be concerned with for our first section in this course?
Volume 2?
Yeah, volume 2. Yeah, easy. That's so that's what we're going to have to get. Look, you're not going to look. I don't expect you to get your head around this document, right? But that's what you want. Ideally, by the end of this course, you'll know the National Construction Code really well. But I don't want you to be daunted and open that up tonight and start reading and go, my God, what have I just embarked upon? It is a massive document. It self-references a lot. It is really hard to read and really hard to follow. That's my job, to give you some clarification of what that means and what it refers to. But do spend that time to get to know it and have a look at it, see what it covers, and see what advice it provides you. We'll go in there, have a look at volume 2 just briefly. Make that bigger. A bit slightly taller. Yeah, because it just doesn't give much to see in terms of contents. Yeah. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have a look at that as a PDF. So, food resources. Sentence that. Okay, no, sorry, it doesn't appear that I've got the NCC as a PDF on that flash drive. So we'll have to navigate it as this, because otherwise it'll take a while to download. that's that. I'd like to see more of this contents page on the left-hand side. So with our very limited view of our contents, we'll go through that. But what it covers, so general requirements, performance provisions, so it tells you how things should perform. The National Construction Code defines the way in which we build by two methods. One method is it says that, let's say, a class 1 building should be this. It should stop water getting inside of it, right? It says that it has to be not watertight, but resist the passage of water into internal outlets. So it says that's how it has to perform. That's called the performance solutions. And so we can say, well, look, yeah, our class 1 dwelling, I want to build that then as a yurt, right? We won't find anything that refers to yurts in the National Construction Code. So we'll have to go to an engineer who has certification to be designing such structure to say, yes, I can design that yurt so no water will make its way into the building, that all the rain falls off the outside. So they can take that performance solution. And the NCC says, well, yes, if you have an engineer that designs it and that meets our performance solution, well, then it complies with the National Construction Code. That's one way of complying with the National Construction Code. What we focus on in this course is what's called deemed to satisfy. So what we'll be learning is, so the second option within the National Construction Code, it says, if you build this thing in this particular way, following these instructions and these Australian standards, then that also satisfies the National Construction Code. So that's the two approaches that you can take with the National Construction Code. So we've got our performance provisions, acceptable construction, and then also under acceptable construction, then it goes into each of our areas specifically. So first one, site preparation. The National Construction Code tells you the benchmarks that you have to meet for site preparation, how we prepare a site. It's not a complete how-to. It won't tell you how to square up footings and so on and lay your form boards and stuff like that, but it will tell you that if you've got these particular soils or these particular footings, they have to land on natural ground that has at least 50 kPa bearing capacity for internal beams and 100 kPa bearing capacity for external beams. It tells you things like that. So it says these are the limitations. Anything outside of those limitations, you've got to go to a performance solution. Engineer has to design that. So it tells you site preparation, footings and slabs, masonry. So what are the basic requirements for masonry to meet the National Construction Code? About cavity width and brick ties and how thick a mortar gap should be. So it provides all the basics, the benchmarks on that. Framing, roof and wall cladding, glazing, fire safety, health and amenities, safe movement and access. So how steep can the staircase be? How wide can that staircase be? If we have to provide for disabled access, how wide does that need to be? What sort of clearance do we need around doors? So it sets out all those and then plus some additional construction requirements. Fire safety, health, and amenity. And so that's covering a whole host of things in terms of like light and ventilation. What's the minimum size of windows that we need to have in a building to make it habitable? We don't want to build a building that has only just like a tiny little window. We won't get enough light in there. We won't get enough ventilation.
So, whole process of installation must comply with National Construction Code.
Yes. So if we go the deemed to satisfy route, if we are going to be doing that design ourselves, if we're going to be specifying this is how it should be built, we do it via the deemed to satisfy. If our client says, look, that's all really good, but this thing, I want you to do it this way. I want a window that's 300 by 300 in a large room. And that's all I want. I want that feeling. Like you're probably not going to get that from a client. But if you have a client that says, this is what I want, you're going to say, well, that doesn't meet the National Construction Code. It doesn't meet the deemed to satisfy. However, we can have an engineer design us a system that will provide the performance solution as set out in the National Construction Code, with some mechanical ventilation and some light source, to meet those requirements. So what we're concerned with are the basic requirements as set out by the National Construction Code of how we design and build. That's what we're concerned with. And then once we understand those basic requirements, what fits in with that, what doesn't fit within that, then we know our extent to which we can design and specify, and the extent to which we have to pass on to other professionals. So that's volume 2. Now volume 1 looks very different. So volume 2 sets it out with all these specific aspects, footings and slabs, masonry, framing, etc. like that. Volume 2 doesn't. Volume 2 is far simpler. It's about access, egress, health and amenity, fire services, etc. It's less prescriptive than that. But one thing I wanted to show you is, or it would be probably under general requirements. Let's drop that down. Documents adopted by reference. I apologise, but I'll get away. I'd like to minimise that top bit. I wonder if I can push it up a bit. No, we're a little bit limited. But I spoke about Australian standards now at the start of the National Construction Code. There is this list of the Australian standards that are referenced by that National Construction Code. And I spoke earlier on, about our bookshelf of Australian standards. If we go through this, 1170, 1276, etc., 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 this is why we had a bookshelf of Australian standards. There are a lot of Australian standards that are referred to. For this subject, I think I even know what you're going to say. For this subject, we are narrowing it down to certain things. There are some Australian standards that you are going to be referring to, and then there are others you're not going to be referring to. So AS 4773, that's actually a really good one for you guys to check out. Masonry in small buildings. And then also...
they can be changed any time, standards, so we can check them regularly because standards can be changed anytime.
Yes, once you start working in the industry, it'll become pretty clear when Australian standard is going to change. You'll get notifications, but also you'll probably be a member of either the Building Designers Association or the Housing Industry Association or the Master Builders. You'll probably be a member of an industry body, and then whenever anything's about to change, probably 6 months in advance, they'll be going, oh, there are these changes that are going to be happening, and this is going to be this
because
thing.
Because recently changed. I remember a wood solution, and they sent me some notification, and that something is about the I didn't read everything through, but about the wall framing for multiple stories, it's changed. That can be something 8 meter. That's used to be before. I'm not sure how it was before, but that is a change. Something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you mentioned Wood Solutions. Now, Wood Solutions is a great site for you to get onto and be a member of and get notifications from. Yeah, if anything's going to change, industry bodies like Wood Solutions is going to tell you things about timber and timber framing when anything's in the pipeline for change in that regard. So yeah, be aware, yes, that the Australian standards changed. Now, the NCC, that's updated all the time. It's always being amended, it's always being updated. I can be confident that if I see, okay, Australian Standard 4600 for cold form steel structures was last updated in 2005. That's the current one I've just pulled off the ABCB site. They're the body responsible for coordinating and updating. That's the last one that we be called upon to look at. So there's that list. Have a look at that list. It won't make much sense to you right now, but beware as you work through the National Construction Code. It will say, like, let's say we're looking at masonry. It's going to say AS 3500 and AS 4773 in there. AS 3700 for masonry. Sorry, 3700 and 4773. But also be aware of that list. And finally, I mentioned about Australian standards. Has everybody here, has anybody accessed the library yet, the online library?
Yes.
Yeah? You have?
Yes, but not many books. Yeah, not many.
No, yeah, so you can order in books. The main use of the library, I think, for you guys will be the access to the Australian standards, to the online databases. So you can access it through the page, libraries. And then log in. So for you, your borrower ID is going to be your TAFE student number, and then your birthday, like day / year. Oh, no, day, month, isn't it?
No, just
four digits.
Four digits.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's day, month.
Yeah, day and month.
So once you've logged in, click on this one that takes you back to the home page, and you want to click on this one here, Online Resources, Databases. Once you're in there, click on this link here, Australian Standards, SAI Global. And that will take you to this page where you can search any of those Australian standards. Typically, this is going to be done in conjunction with reference to the National Construction Code. The National Construction Code is going to tell you what Australian standards you need to be looking at, and this is where you get them. So go through the library, click on, once you've logged in, click on Home, go to Databases, Online Databases, and then SAI Global. So go 4773. Does anybody remember what 4773 was? Masonry. There you are. And there we go. We've got masonry and small buildings. Look for this. This one says available, superseded. The most current version is not always going to pop up at the top. Beware of that. So that's the 2010 version. It's available but superseded. Let's scroll down. Here's our 2015. That's the current one. So if it doesn't, amended 2016. Yeah, and that's another thing. So yeah, that's cool. No, that's a really good point you bring up. Now this one says 2015, but what happens is the most that one will keep getting updated with these amendments. There was an amendment that happened in 2016. Now, if you want to know specifically about that amendment that happened at that point in time, you can go and look at that amendment, but you can be confident that that amendment has now been included in this one here. So that's the one we're going to have to be looking at. So the last time that Australian standard came out in full was in 2015, but there have been well, there's been an amendment to that since that time, but it will have been included in that one. So, let's see what else there is. So there's another copy of it down there.
So the point 2 it's just the same thing but another copy.
Oh, okay. No, that's another very good point you raised. No, so we've got point 1s and point 2. Well, actually, some Australian standards have like up to point 6. They're divided into those point for different applications. So we've got this one, point 1 is for design. Down there we've got point 2 for construction. Another Australian standard you're going to be referring to a bit in this course is AS 1100. That's drafting standards. Now you have a different drafting standard for electrical and mechanical drafting than you do for architectural drafting, than you do for civil drafting. So there's 1100.1, 2, 3, I think through to 6. What we're concerned with as drafters is architectural drafting, 1100.3. So that's a really good observation. It's important to look at that point, whichever, as well. So as drafters and designers, you're probably going to be interested in point 1, but also in point 2. The reason we'd want to know how stuff is installed is because we don't want to be doing stuff, telling builders how to build, and then like through our instructions, our plans and specifications, and then on site they're saying that can't be built like that. Who's this fooled through this stuff? We want to ensure that we're specifying things as they should be designed, but also as they should be built on site. We have to be cognizant of that and be aware of that. Yes, revisions happen, but a good draft and a good designer will minimise that happening. So, yeah. So we'll be interested in point 1 and point 2. So that's where we access the Australian standards. And I'll leave it at that. So as long as you can find your way there and find those Australian standards, I'll also be aware that I'll stop this one. Just a minute.